Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I am doing the power rankings for the Western region following the Kickoff Clash. Obviously on Wednesday I had my rankings for the APAC region come out. Meant to have these up on Friday, but some things came up, so we're doing them now. Better late than never. So obviously, if you missed the APAC rankings, you can check those out either by clicking the link in the cards or in the description, or at the end of this video, you can see them there. I tend to weight the results of the tournaments more than anything else, so some of these rankings may be a little surprising to some people, they may not be, really depends on the person, but we're going to jump into these and go through the 13 teams in the Western region from bottom to top. So let's go, let's jump in, and let's get started at number 13. In the 13th spot, I have the Vancouver Titans. I don't think this will be much of a surprise to anybody. This Titans team has looked pretty poor the entire season. They are one of the two teams in the league with 0 wins so far this season, and they just have not looked very impressive. They got beaten pretty badly by the London Spitfire. They got beaten pretty badly by the New York Excelsior, who I don't think look very good. They have looked bad against pretty much everybody they played. Their best game was one against the Uprising, and even then they didn't manage to win that one. They have not looked good against any competition really at all, and especially not looked good against any top-level competition. So for me, this is a pretty no-brainer to put this team here at the bottom spot here, number 13 in the Western region. The new coaching change, bringing Deepe in as their head coach, could definitely be something that helps this roster, could be the thing that really kind of elevates them going forward. But right now, based on what we've seen, I definitely do not think it is a logical choice to put them any higher than this spot. Number 12, I have a team that breaks my heart based on what we've seen from them this season. I have the New York Excelsior here at 12. I have not been impressed by this team this season. In fact, I've thought that this team has been quite possibly the worst team in this region, but they did beat the Vancouver Titans, and so I kind of have to give them credit for that. They have not looked very good. They've not looked very consistent. They really struggle with flexibility. They don't have a main support that I feel confident in. I think they might have the worst support line in the league. I don't think Gangnam Jin's main support play has been particularly impressive, and I think he is your better flex support, so you're putting your second best flex support as your starting flex support. I think this team looks like they need a lot of work. We know they've had issues with visas. They talked about that in a video that went up on their YouTube channel this past week. It has been a struggle, I think, to see this team play. They definitely have a lot of things that they look like they could be good because they have some incredibly talented pieces, but I just think they lack flexibility and depth on this roster, which really holds them back. And so for me, as much as I would love to have this New York Excelsior roster higher, as much as I think that this roster could potentially be among the best, we know they've had some issues with scrim time and stuff like that that they've talked about in the past, so it's just not the season for this NYXL roster. And hopefully things go better for them as the season goes on. But right now, lack of flexibility, lack of depth, that's really hurt them, and they are here at 12. At number 11, I have that other winless team, the Paris Eternal. And while, yes, the New York Excelsior have managed more wins than this Paris Eternal roster, I think the Paris Eternal, generally speaking, have looked like the better team. They had a very, very, very tough stage this kind of first Kickoff Clash. You know, you look back at what the, say, New York Excelsior did, like, yes, they had to play some really good teams with the Gladiators and the Shock, but they also played the Vancouver Titans. And I think this Paris Eternal team right now would beat the Vancouver Titans, and I think this Paris Eternal team would probably beat the New York Excelsior. But when you look at who Paris played, and they played the Shock, and the Mayhem, and the Defiant, and the Justice, and the Fuel, and the Outlaws, all of whom made the Kickoff Clash, it's no surprise that they didn't win a match. They almost beat the Houston Outlaws, and that win really did, for me, kind of solidify their spot ahead of the New York Excelsior. Yes, you can give the New York Excelsior credit for getting a win. They beat a team that wasn't very good and didn't look very good doing it. I think Paris has shown more potential. I think they've shown a little bit more recently. I just think right now they look a little bit better. Obviously, we'll see when they play who is the better of these two teams, but right now, I think Paris just looks a little bit better. I think they've been a little bit more consistent. I think now that they've made that change from Naga to WUB. We're going to see how this team kind of adapts and grows. They've had some changes so far, but overall I see some promise in this roster, more so than I've seen in the New York roster, and so I'm going to give the Paris Eternal the edge here at number 11. Moving on from this very, very, very bottom tier, let's move into my number 10 pick, which is the Boston Uprising. They've had some moments that were pretty weak. Some moments where I think we thought this team was basically terrible. They've had quite a few big changes to their roster, of course, getting rid of Stryker and getting rid of Marvel, but ultimately this roster, I think, has started to look better and solidify who they are as a team. We saw them look much, much better in some of their more recent performances. Obviously, that win over the Washington Justice. I'm still not super 100% sold on this Uprising roster, but they definitely have shown some promise and some potential. I think this is a team that would benefit in making potentially some roster moves to add some more depth to this team. But really, to the DPS line that they would have to add another piece to. They have Itzel and they have Punk, so they have that kind of tank line pretty much sorted. Support line, they're fine. DPS line, they could use a little bit more depth. I think as time goes on and this team kind of has now kind of figured out who they are and who they're going to play around and who they're going to be, I expect them to have a bit of a better kind of later season than their opening bit. Wasn't the worst in the league. Definitely left something to be desired. So I have some hope in this Uprising roster. I don't think they are that bad. I think they definitely have some potential to put in some work against some of these middle level teams, and we'll see what happens going forward. But for right now, I have them here at the 10 spot. At number 9, I have the London Spitfire. This team just barely missed out on making it to the Kickoff Clash to start the season, but they have looked better than I think people had expected them to. Obviously, after last season, they looked pretty bad. They have had a lot of good things happen for them this season. They've looked a lot better. I think they have found an identity that works for them, and I think that's going to be something that we see going forward. I don't really think this is a team that is going to be the most flexible and play the most different types of compositions. I think they know what works for them, and they're going to try to run that as much as they can, but it'll work, I think, at times. It'll be interesting to see how these rush compositions go going forward. They were pretty popular in the actual Kickoff Clash tournament. They were more popular than I think people expected them to be, and I think there's a potential that we see them get a lot more playtime here in the Midseason Madness. Only time will tell at this point, but I definitely am of the opinion that this London Spitfire roster has some potential to do some pretty big things as we approach this kind of midpoint in the season. And right now, they are at number 9. They are not a team that I feel confident in right now making a big, deep run in the tournament, but they definitely have improved significantly from last season, and I think they look to be making a pretty big splash in the mid-season madness. Moving on to number 8, I have the Toronto Defiant, the first of the teams that made the Kickoff Clash tournament. The Toronto Defiant were an interesting team. I was pretty underwhelmed by their performance in the tournament itself. They fell to teams that you kind of would expect for them to lose to. They lost to Dallas, and then they lost to the Outlaws. The Outlaws match was a little close at times, really kind of came down to Pelican popping off at the end on Coliseo, really kind of winning them that series. But the Defiant, to me, are a team that we're going to have to see a lot of kind of things going forward. Really, the reason why I put them here at 8 below the rest of the teams who made the tournament is because the Defiant just had a major change to their team, moving on from KDG as their head coach, committing themselves to the players on their roster in Finale and Muse, who had both kind of been reported to not be unhappy with the team, whatever the report there was. So there's a little bit of turmoil with this team, a little bit of a shakeup. I don't know who their head coach is going to be yet. I don't know if they've announced it yet. I don't believe they have. So I'm a little kind of on edge with this team, waiting to see kind of what happens. They had, in my opinion, the weakest showing of any team in the Kickoff Clash tournament proper. And so right now, I look at this team and I think they are probably the weakest of the teams that made the tournament, but I still think that they are a better team than those 5 teams that missed the tournament altogether. And so I'm confident and pretty comfortable putting them here in the 8th spot. Number 7, I have the Washington Justice. Oh, Washington Justice, you magnificent team who, for whatever reason, when they are at their best, are incredible. And when they're not at their best, they're sometimes pretty bad. But I thought that during the actual Kickoff Clash tournament, they had a pretty decent performance. They almost beat the San Francisco Shock, but it was a reverse sweep, which you have to definitely give some criticism for that and feel somewhat bad for that, but the LA Gladiators also got reverse swept twice, and they won the whole tournament, so it's not the end of the world. It doesn't tell you everything. They didn't have a great performance against the Florida Mayhem, which I think a lot of that could have just come down to a just kind of momentum killer, kind of feeling like they were so close the day before and fell back, and then it was just hard for them to bounce back. But I think when this team looks good, they still look to be an incredible team. There's definitely some things they need to fix up and some things they need to sort out. Vigilante, I believe, is going to be able to play this tournament cycle, so we're going to see Vigilante probably enter the lineup, though Krillin has looked pretty good, so I'm not going to say 100% we're not going to see Krillin ever again. I still have not completely given up on this Justice roster. They definitely did not have the best showing in the tournament. I'm not surprised to see them be one of the first teams out of that Western tournament, but all things considered, I thought they were still a decent team. I still feel pretty good about them going forward. I think that they have the possibility to do a lot of great things, but their inconsistencies keep them from going any higher than this 7 spot. At number 6, I have the Houston Outlaws. This team has impressed me more than I thought they would this season. Definitely a roster with a ton of talent, but the issues I had with this roster were really at the kind of expense of flexibility. They don't have a traditional main support player, though Lastro, unlike Gangnam Jin, has looked pretty good on the role. Their tank role is definitely the biggest question mark, because I still think that having Dante play a lot of Doomfist is not really the look, because he doesn't provide you the flexibility, and Piggy just hasn't looked as good as he did last season. And so this Outlaws team has some issues there. But I think that with Pelican and Merritt playing as well as they have, the DPS line feels good, and I think that we've seen a lot of Iris and Lastro. And the two of them have looked pretty good in the support line. So really for me, this team is just kind of a team that has to figure out their tank situation, has to figure out how to work their tank situation into a better, more consistent duo that isn't limited specifically to one hero or another. I'm curious to kind of see if the Junker Queen is going to be available in the next beta round. Maybe we'll have another tank hero in the game that maybe will be good, and that she looks like a hero that potentially could be one where DPS players might actually pick her up and be pretty good with her. Who knows at this point in time? That's all speculation. But I do think that Houston has looked pretty good, all things considered. They've surprised me somewhat, and I feel like this 6th spot is a pretty good place to put them. They're not an incredible team. They're not a perfect team. I think they can compete with some of those top dogs, but I don't think right now they are among the top dogs. At number 5, I have the Florida Mayhem. They have impressed me quite a bit this season. I think they've looked better than I had expected them to. Very solid coaching for this team by Gumba. But really, to me, the thing that has impressed me the most about this team is just how well they play together. And obviously, a lot of that comes down to the coaching. But also just these are players that look pretty good. There are a lot of scrappy rookies. And then you have Animo and Xe and Kariv, who kind of help kind of make this team have a little bit more solid veteran presence. But I think someone has looked very good on the tank role, has basically permabenched Adam. I've been really impressed by Hydron. I think Checkmate has been pretty good as well. And I think Surmajed has, when he plays well and pops off, it's like you have a third DPS and he just does some really great things. I think that they still have talent limitations, which is one of the things that keeps them out of that elite tier. I think that they just don't have the same firepower that some of these other teams do. With Xe coming to the US now, I think we'll see a lot more of him in the rotation, and we'll see a lot more maps where Xe is kind of favored. I think we'll see more of a presence for Xe alongside Hydron, and maybe that will help his team have that flexibility they need. Who knows exactly, but I'm very happy with what we've seen from this Mayhem roster. They've surprised me quite a bit. They didn't have the best showing in the tournament, but they were still pretty good. They managed to beat the Justice and kept it somewhat close with the Rain. So Mayhem, definitely a team I feel pretty good about right now going into the Midseason Madness. Not the best team in the world, but definitely the team closest to being a member of that elite club. Now we move into the top 4, which is where I really think we get to the best of the best in this Western region, the kind of elite upper echelon teams. And we start that tier at number 4 with the San Francisco Shock. This team obviously finished the Kickoff Clash qualifiers with the best record in the West and in the league as a whole, 6-0. They have not dropped a regular season game yet. but their tournament performance itself was not quite the impressive showing that you would have liked to see from a team with a 6-0 record. They had to reverse sweep the Washington Justice. They then lost to the Atlanta Reign. They did beat the Houston Outlaws, and then they got beaten pretty badly by the Dallas Fuel. We did see this Shock roster pick up Mikey, a main tank player who kind of comes in to help fill in some of those potential gaps from Kaluge, make this roster a little more well-rounded in that tank role, something we're seeing, I think, is going to be a trend going forward as some of these teams realize that maybe the way forward is to have some more flexibility in the tank role in certain metas, because sometimes you might not actually, if Reinhardt is going to be the meta that we think he might be, you want someone that can play the Reinhardt. Mikey kind of provides that for you. I think that we've seen a lot of great play from the Shock roster. I think their DPS duo, or their trio, really has looked really, really good. Proper, of course, is pounding so far this season. Violet has been pretty good on the main support, better than he was last season, and we've seen a lot of great performances out of Finn as well. So I'm very happy with the Shock roster. They have impressed me more than I thought they would. I did have them at 4 in the regular season, preseason power rankings, so they're about where they started the season. For me, definitely not the greatest team, but they have the potential to definitely be one of the best teams and are still continuing to improve as the season progresses. So very happy with them so far, very happy with what I've seen from them. So I have them here at number 4. Now, when I said I definitely put a lot of emphasis on the tournament matches, that can be seen pretty clearly with my number 3 team, which is the Atlanta Reign. They have had a bit of a struggle so far in the Kickoff Clash when it comes to the qualifying matches. They were not the best team in the league by any means, dropping games to the Justice and to the Spitfire and to the Gladiators. But when it came to the actual tournament itself, this team looked much better. And I think the tournament really is the thing that shows you where these teams are at the most. It's one thing to, win a game or lose a game against teams and you have a whole week to prepare for one match or maybe even 2 matches. But when you have to play 4 or even 6 matches in a weekend, you get a much better idea of where a team is. And with the Reign, we kind of saw that they looked to be a team that was flexible and adaptable, that had the necessary players and talent to be able to make those changes when they realized things aren't working. And we saw that against the Shock, where they changed their playstyle going into the tournament. They realized they were struggling. They came out against the Shock and looked very, very good, beating a Shock team that had not lost the game yet. So Reign looked pretty good, obviously making it to the winners finals. They lost to the Gladiators, and then they would eventually lose to the Dallas Fuel in the lower bracket. But I thought they were very, very good. I thought they looked pretty impressive, with the exception of the game on Colosseo against the Fuel, but we don't have to talk about that one. I definitely think this roster has shown why they are so good. We have seen just how good the players are on this roster. They competed with the Dallas Fuel in a way that not even the Shock did, so I'm happy with the Reign. I think they looked very good in this tournament. I think this kind of solidified my thoughts on this roster and how good I think they truly are. And so for me, no surprise here, they are at number 3. At number 2, I have the Dallas Fuel. No surprises here. They finished second in the Kickoff Clash tournament. And so when you look at this team, you kind of think that second is the perfect spot for them. They have a very, very, very talented roster. They looked very, very good running that Zarya composition with Hanbin. And they looked pretty much like they were better than, 11 of the 12 other teams in this Western region. They looked pretty significantly better than most of those teams. It was really just the Gladiators that gave them any trouble during this tournament. That was the only team they lost to. They lost to them twice. And so you kind of have to, they are obviously better than everybody else that they played. Like I said, they crushed the Atlanta Reign on Colosseo during the lower bracket finals. And so this is a team that looks good. Definitely one of the better teams in the league in this Western region. I have some concerns about their flexibility because, they can't really play Zarya or Winston on the same player. They have to switch between Fearless and Hanbin. Something you don't really see from a team like the Gladiators or even the Shock. The Reign feel pretty comfortable playing Hawk a lot on like Doomfist or on Zarya. Obviously, they'll bring in Gator for the Reinhardt. But what we're seeing with this team is that they look their best when they have Hanbin in, and when they put Fearless in, they don't look nearly as good, but less that being the issue and more that they just wanted that flexibility when those two players are in. They might, be switching over to Fearless a lot more. If Ryan is meta, we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet, but it's very clear this Dallas Fuel roster is just incredibly talented and has enough firepower to compete with pretty much anybody, and so putting them here at number 2, no-brainer, easily among the best teams in the Western region and among the best teams in the league. But no surprises here. Number 1, LA Gladiators. They won the Western Region Kickoff Clash. It's a very, very, very big performance that got them there. Obviously dropping one map the entire tournament. They were dominant in this region. Everybody in every role looked perfect, looked incredible. And it really was just them cementing their dominance. I had them at number 1 in the preseason power rankings. They dropped a little bit during the stage because of some of their struggles, but I think that ultimately made them a better team. They learned more about who they were and where they needed to adapt, and I think ultimately that made them into a better team when the tournament came around. And now here we have them back at the top of the region. A dominant tournament performance like that doesn't happen by accident. They were so good this tournament. There's no way you could put any other team in the number 1 spot. It's just not possible. Very good performances all around. I think this Gladiators team really is punching for the top, and I think they look to be potentially, Shanghai Dragons level dominant from 2021. They look super good, super solid. No questions here. I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind. Gladiators, top team currently in the Western region. So there you go. That is that. That is my Western region power rankings post-Kickoff Clash. You can see my power rankings here if you want to, check them out, see what I did, where I put all the teams. There you go. That's that list for you. But that's going to be all from me for today. Let me know your thoughts on the power rankings in the comments down below. If you agree, you disagree, let me know where your disagreements are, or if you think I am incredibly smart and brilliant and just always right. You can tell me that too, either one, whichever works for you. But that's going to be all from me for today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.